How to raise your credit score fast. That elusive piece of knowledge everyone wants, but nobody seems to be able to figure out completely. It's kind of like trying to find that perfect rooftop in Call of Duty where you can see everyone, but nobody can see you. So you get up there and just wait for unsuspecting players to just kind of sit in your crosshairs just to get shot from somebody behind you that's been there for ages. But anyways, what's up guys? I'm Mike.
And I'm Britt.
And in this video, we're going to talk about how Brittany and I raised our credit score from being basically non-existent not too long ago to over 800 in a very short period of time. So this by far has been the most requested video you guys have wanted us to make. And I hope it doesn't disappoint you, but for those of you who are new to the channel, you may be asking, but Mike, you and Brittany look like you're in your mid-30s. Why didn't you have a credit score? There's actually a video that we made on that topic specifically that goes into detail about why we didn't have a credit score, why we didn't even have any credit cards for a long period of time. I will link that up here if you guys are interested in watching that. But the TLDR of that video was, Brittany and I were in a pretty dire financial situation when we first got married. We were $120,000 in debt. We had debt payments, as Dave Ramsey would say, up to our eyeballs. And we were barely making ends meet. So we decided to go through Dave Ramsey's program. In doing so, we made the decision to cut up all of our credit cards and cancel all of our credit accounts. So over time, our credit score slowly declined month over month, year over year, to the point where if we wanted to get a line of credit from a bank that we weren't already part of, we would apply for a credit card or a mortgage or something like that, and they would reply back, "We can't find any information on you guys. Sorry, you're out of luck. Like, your credit score just doesn't exist." I think we got like 3 letters in the mail saying that specific thing when Brittany and I were shopping for a mortgage for this specific house that we were in, and that's why we ended up actually getting a credit card. And that's when our credit score went from being non-existent to about 814, I think, in a matter of a week or two, or maybe a month. But it was very, very quickly. But I want to talk about some things that I hope will make Brittany's and my situation make a little bit more sense and maybe shine some light on why our credit score increased so quickly versus why, if you're watching this and you're trying to get your credit score up, maybe your credit score isn't increasing fast at all.
And we want to give some tips that maybe you could try to help increase your credit score too. So what is a credit score? So there are different ways to calculate it. The most widely used is the FICO score. So we'll be talking about that throughout this video.
Yeah, there are 3 different credit scoring systems. FICO is the most widely used. It's used by like 90% of creditors out there. And it's also the most widely accepted. So when we say credit score in this video, we're talking about a FICO score.
And a FICO score can range anywhere from 300, which is the worst, up to 850, which is the best.
So a FICO score is a measure of risk to lenders. It's basically a number that is given to you based on your credit reports from the 3 credit bureaus. It tells the lenders like, okay, this person's either not risky at all, and we can lend them money, or they're super risky and we shouldn't lend them any money at all, or if we do, we should give them a high interest rate just to kind of like counteract that risk. So the lower the score, the more risky it is to the lender. The higher the score, the less risky it is for the lender. So this is why people like high credit scores, because it's a lot easier to get money and lower interest rates.
That was something when I first started learning about credit cards I didn't understand about how banks calculate your risk, and that determines what type of credit you can get and what type of score you get.
Okay, so how's your FICO score calculated? It's broken down into 5 parts. The first part being your payment history. That represents 35% of your entire credit score. And this is basically like how you paid your bills over time. Are you late? Are you on time? That sort of thing. The next highest percentage of your credit score is the amounts owed. This represents 30% of your entire credit score. And this is basically how much debt you have and how much credit utilization you are using. So credit utilization means like if you have a $1,000 credit limit and you're using 500 of that, that means you're using 50% of your credit. So with this one, the amount of debt isn't nearly as significant in a lot of cases as the utilization rate is.
So the third part, which accounts for 15% of your credit score, is your length of credit history, just how long you've had credit.
Pretty simple. The fourth part of your credit score has to do with the types of credit lines that you have, whether that be credit cards, retail accounts, a mortgage, student loans, car payments, that sort of thing. So that's called the credit mix. That represents 10% of your total credit score. And the fifth and final thing that represents 10% of your credit score as well is new lines of credit. And this is just any new lines of credit that you open. So FICO keeps track of this for 12 months. This will be part of your credit score for the first 12 months that a new line of credit is open. Okay, now that that basic information is out of the way, let's get into why Brittany's and my credit score pretty much disappeared over the 3 years we were becoming debt-free and the 5 years subsequently that we didn't have any debt or any lines of credit after that. Yeah. So going back to the first part of your credit score, or the part that makes up the largest percentage of that, and that's your payment history. We still had a little bit of that over time. Like The payments that we made on all of our student loans, all of our car payments, the one credit card that we had for a couple of years, all that stuff was staying there. Asterisk, I think. I can't be certain about this, but I think when people pulled our credit, they were still able to see that way back in the past when we were trying to get a mortgage for this house. The second thing, the amounts owed that represents 30% of your credit score. We didn't know anything. And when we were applying for a mortgage, we hadn't owed anything in 5 years. So that part of our credit score just wasn't there.
And the third thing, which accounts for 15% of your score, which was the length of your credit history, ours was pretty much non-existent at that point after the 12-month time period.
Yeah, I'm not sure if when we were applying for a mortgage or a line of credit with a credit card, if creditors could see how long our closed lines of credit had been there, or if it was just, if they just look at open lines of credit. And since we didn't have any open lines of credit, if that were the case, our credit history, the length of our credit history would have shown 0. The next thing, our credit mix, we didn't have any credit cards or anything. We didn't have any debts, so 0 credit mix. And new lines of credit for the fifth and final thing a credit score is made of?
0.
So the vast majority of the parts that a credit score is made of, we didn't have any of. And the couple of parts that we could have had something to look at, I'm not sure if those would have been visible since we didn't have any open lines of credit at the time. So in my opinion, this is why Brittany's in my credit score, when we applied for a credit card, when we applied for a mortgage, nobody seemed to know what it was. So all that being said, how on earth did Brittany and I go from not having any credit score at all to having a credit score of 814 in a matter of a month at the most? It's so simple, I almost feel silly like saying what we did, because we did not do anything special. We got a credit card, we opened up a new line of credit, and the only bank that would offer us this line of credit was a bank we were already using.
So because we got a credit card, that helped with the 10% of our credit score because we now had a new line of credit.
So with the opening up of our credit card, we now have a new line of credit. We now have new credit on our credit report that lenders can look at. So that part's good. And from what I've read, from what I've researched, as Brittany was saying, that will increase your credit score. The second thing we did, with our new credit card, we never spent more than 10% of our credit utilization. Since Brittany and I were brand new credit card holders, well, not brand new, but basically brand new, we were given a $1,000 credit limit. We never put more than $100 on our credit card at a time, and we paid it off immediately. I think the first bill we got in the mail was for $8, and that was because some $8 charge had rolled over from like the very end of a billing cycle onto the next, and we didn't have time to pay it off before it was part of our bill. So that helped with the credit utilization, which is 30% of your credit score. We were under the assumption that getting our credit score up to a place that could get us the best interest rate for this house would take probably 6 months. Mm-hmm. That was the impression that we got from all the lenders that we spoke with. Every single person that we spoke with suggested that we did not use more than 20% of our credit amount at a time. They were not financial advisors, they were not credit advisors, but we took their advice, and that's why we didn't spend more than 10% on our credit card. That's all we did, those 3 or 4 things. And surprisingly enough, it did not take nearly as long as Brittany and I thought to get our credit score up to 814. It took like 2 weeks, or a month at the most. I don't remember exactly how long it took. But it was way, way less than we initially thought. So I was kind of dumbfounded because we were operating under this assumption that like, okay, well, it's gonna take another 6 months for us to get this house, and it didn't. The only thing I can think of that makes that make sense in my mind is that we had this huge history of paying off student loans for 3 years, me having a credit card for 5 years before that, both Brittany and I having multiple car loans over a period of years and years and years before that. So we had this long line of credit history that was just kind of sitting there waiting, kind of simmering under the surface, that did not go away even though Brittany and I had been debt-free for 5 years and our most recent credit activity was non-existent, maybe preventing that other stuff from being seen by lenders when we applied for credit cards and mortgages and things like that. As soon as we opened up that one credit card account, that new line of credit, my opinion is, again, I have no idea if this is reality or not, but my opinion is that kind of like opened the doors, opened the book back up to Brittany's and my credit history, and now like the algorithm that works within the FICO system could work with all the previous information that was already there for Brittany and I. So obviously there's not just one thing that goes into a credit score, and all the research I've done for this video was done on myfico.com and fico.com. And you guys can find all this information on those websites as well. While some things are very, very clear in terms of what can help and what doesn't help, Some things aren't. I think it's kind of one of those things, like everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. All that being said, Brittany and I are not just going to talk about what we did. We're going to give you guys some basic tips, some generally broad tips that anybody can follow to raise their credit score and hopefully keep it at a level that they want it to be at. From what I've read, what I've heard from experts, anything over 740, so 740 to 850 is good. The first tip I would recommend to anybody who's looking to have a credit score, get a credit card, or use credit in any way is please learn to live your life without a credit score. Be financially responsible without a credit score. Brittany and I lived our lives for 5 years without any regard for credit scores or anything. We paid for everything with cash. Nothing was paid for with credit. That laid a very good foundation of financial responsibility, fiscal responsibility for Brittany and I. So we understand how money works. We understand what's dumb when it comes to using money. We understand what's smart when it comes to using money. And so all that we learned is kind of transitioning over now to using credits. So if you can live your life without a credit score and be just fine financially, then you'll be set up in a place where you can reap all the benefits of having a credit card or multiple credit cards without getting into trouble. The second thing I would recommend, you need to recognize that you're playing into a system that has very, very little, almost nothing to do with how financially responsible you actually are, and almost everything to do with owing money to somebody else or multiple people.
And if you look back when we were breaking down the FICO score, all it does is just look at your debt, and that's it, nothing else.
But again, if you recognize these things and you understand the system that you're playing into, you can play along with it and reap the rewards and make your cost of living 1 to 2 to sometimes 5% less in certain scenarios with certain credit cards, or maybe earn a bunch of free trips all over the planet. Okay, the third thing I would do if I were looking to raise my credit score is check my credit reports for errors, all of them, all 3 of them. So check your credit report with Equifax, TransUnion, Experian, all those. Make sure there are no errors, because if there's something on there you didn't pay for, obviously you want to get that checked for security purposes. You need to get that taken off as well. Fourth thing I would do is pay bills on time. Make sure you're paying your credit card bills or whatever bills you have on time. This gets in the payment history portion of your credit score and looks at how well you've paid your bills. Are they on time or are they not? So obviously, since that portion of the credit score looks at if you paid your bills on time, you want to pay your bills on time.
Or in our case, pay it early or as soon as it processes. And I think that did help us.
Yeah, I mean, Brittany and I, like we said before, as soon as something processes, we pay it off. Like that day or next day. Next thing, pay off or lower the amount of debt you have overall. And Brittany and I would just would say, pay it off, become debt free. Being debt free is amazing. That's our whole story. And go back and look at all the other videos we have on our channel. And again, everything that we've heard says to keep your credit utilization below 20%. So as an example, if your credit limit is $1,000, you don't want to have a bill for more than $200 monthly, and you want to pay it off, obviously. All right, next tip has to do with your length of credit history. So credit history is basically like how long you've had things open for, how long have you had credit in the past. So obviously, if you're looking to get a good credit score, you want to open up credit accounts sooner rather than later. All right, and the last couple tips have to do with new credit lines and your credit mix, like how diversified your credit is. On myfico.com, they don't recommend opening up a bunch of new lines of credit all at once. They see that as you potentially overextending yourself. So be careful about opening up a bunch of lines of credit within short periods of one another. Only open up new accounts when needed was their advice.
And based on the previous 2 tips that Mike just mentioned about opening a new line of credit, but then also not diversifying yourself or stretching yourself too thin with multiple accounts, I think because we kept it simple and just had one credit card open and that was it, I think it helped our score as well. So
with all that being said, guys, that's how we raised our credit score from being non-existent to 814 in a matter of a month or so. I hope this video was helpful to you guys, and it wasn't just Brittany and I talking about what we did. I hope we were able to give you guys some helpful tips. Again, all this stuff is on myfico.com, so if you're interested in reading more, you could read that website for hours. And I would recommend doing that if you guys are really serious about looking into getting your credit score up and increasing it. If this video was helpful, please give it a huge thumbs up. It helps out the YouTube algorithm tremendously. Consider subscribing if you're interested in this type of content, or browsing our channel if you want to look at other videos that Brittany and I have made. Follow us on Instagram at It's Mike and Brit. We have an account there. We have one post, but we plan on posting a lot more in the future, so follow us there. And also, if you're interested in how Brittany and I budget our money every month, our budget template is in the description. It's totally free. You can download it. There's instructions included in it. Budgeting your money is a very good way to see where all of it's going, so you can kind of have a 30,000 foot overview of how you're spending your money. It's very good for becoming financially independent, which is Brittany's and my goal. All right. Thanks for watching again, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye. You may not want to say sniper rifle in the very beginning.